Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. Today, I want to talk with you about onboarding tutorials and share my experience with Veertly and what I'm doing now on my current project. When we started Veertly, we didn't have any onboarding tutorials. We simply have the interface, people who join an event, see the rooms that are there, join the rooms, enable their devices when they are needed, and there was no guide for the users. What was happening is that people were having a lot of problems when they really needed to join video calls and enable the devices. There was a short period of time where they needed to set up everything and join the video calls. And that creates a lot of stress. That creates a lot of custom requests. And this happens because users were usually on a webinars, on a live streams, and then they transform that into breakout rooms. So people had just a few minutes to enter into the breakout rooms. But nothing on the system was set up for them to join a video call. There was no permissions enabled. People didn't know how to do that. There were some cases where people could not even allow to connect to video calls. So there was really a lot of stress in this short period of time. So we had to manage how can we help the users entering the event and having everything set up correctly so that there were no other issues during the event, especially when they really needed. The way we solved this issue was to create an onboarding tutorial. When people enter the event, before doing anything else, we explain how the venue works. It's like if you come to a real event and you get a plan of your event, a map of where is everything, an agenda, a schedule, you get familiarized to the event as soon as you enter. This is exactly the same thing, the same concept. So when you land into the event, we have these tutorials where you go and you explain each area of the platform and what they can do. And one of the steps was to set up the devices. This turned out to be super successful in terms of reducing the amount of requests and especially removing the amount of stress of the users. From that moment on, we no longer had this peak of requests coming when people could not join video calls. No one was stressed, and this was super great. So a smooth onboarding experience is crucial for your applications. But sometimes it's also complex to implement. It's bothering for the users. People tend to skip those tutorials. That's true. So you cannot only rely that everybody will go through these tutorials when developing and conceptualizing your interface, assuming that people have done that when they don't need. For example, in the case of video calls, we still need to guide them how to set up the video calls when they join if they have skipped the initial tutorial. So we have a similar screen when they join a video call and they don't have the device enabled, so that they know how to do it. So that we also reduce the complexity when they join a video call without going through the default flow. Because this tutorial was successful on the event platform itself, we also implemented it on the backend side for the hosts when they are creating an event so that we can guide them through all the different areas of the cockpit where they can manage their event, what they can do. No one so far has complained about this. So I think really that these type of tutorials are really good, especially when your audience is not the most proficient or the ones that are the most familiar with it. And because it only happens once, people still like it. It's not bothering them completely. If they want, they can skip, but they can also go through it. From me and Alex, we really believe that this is a good way to onboard users. And now we are working together again on a new project, on a project on the CSRD space. And in this project, despite not being so complex as Veertly, we still think that an onboarding can really help the users understand how the platform works. They will need to analyze more than 19 topics and comparing it with each other. And this is, in terms of UX, it's not super easy because there's a lot of information to do. So we want to guide the users to understand where they should start instead of being overwhelmed by the quantity of information that's already there when they land. We want to guide them to know what they are doing and where to start. And that's exactly what we are doing now. We are implementing this onboarding tutorial and guide the users with a step-by-step guide so that they know exactly where to start and what to do. I don't know if this is super critical at this stage of the project because we're really in the beginning. We have pre-validated the idea, so in terms of demand, but we have not yet validated with the users on our platform. We are starting this week with onboarding new users to the platform, but we still haven't got this feedback already. So it might be a little bit premature to already implement this onboarding, but we want to have a good experience for the users, also the first ones, because they are early adopters. But if we can make a good impression in the beginning, this would be really nice. So that's why we are trying now to do a simple onboarding tutorial and see what's the feedback from people. So I have mixed feelings about recommending these tutorials when you start developing an app. Sometimes it can be good, depending on the complexity, for example, in the case of Veertly, but we only realize that after being live for some months. On the other hand, if you start doing that immediately in the beginning, it might be useless. And it might hide also some UX problems that you have in your app. So it's really a two-toward thing. So it's not super straightforward if you should do it or not. It's not the only way to onboarding users. It might not be the best way, but it's a way that helps them be guided into the platform. So we are trying again on this project, and maybe in a few weeks I can tell you if it was a good strategy or not. So don't take this as a recommendation for other projects. Think if it's needed, if it's useful, and if it is, just try to implement. Make it simple, don't complexify, because it can get really, if you really go into the details, it can get complex because you need to interact live with your app and changing it live. So I'm struggling now also with some parts of that because we are opening some model dialogues and the tutorial is behind it. So it's also not super straightforward in terms of implementation. So take that into account when starting it. But there are libraries, especially on React, that the framework that I'm using, that are really good. Like, for example, I'm using React Joyride, which is super easy, super customizable, and you can really do whatever you want. And that's also the library that we use for Veertly. So I just took that one and implemented it also in this new project. So keep that in mind. It's easy to implement. There's some complexity. There might not be needed in the beginning, but it might also be super useful. So depending on your own use case. And I think that's it for this week's episode. Not a very long one. Also coming a little bit later than what usually I publish these podcast episodes. But I had some travel during the weekend, so it was not super smooth these last days to release a new episode. But here we are, always trying to keep showing up, keep coming, keep sharing my experience of building products. And I hope this will be as useful for you. So let me know your feedback. I like some of feedback from people. So if you have, just let me know, and happy to hear how you onboard your users on your platform. Have a great week, everyone. Cheers.